Shift my camera and welcome my next guest. You are now on the air there, Jeff. I appreciate you stopping by. I have got Jeff Libby here with me, lore person, to talk a little bit of lore stuff. You didn't see me spawning orcs outside of Bree.
I saw a little bit of it, and then I came to my desk. Should I see anything here, or are we done with that?
We're not. I just forgot. See, I've got to tweak the monitor, and it's not working. I don't suppose you're seeing anything now?
Nope. I see the mouse cursor.
All right, well, I'm going to have to do the password then on that computer before I can get that screen up. So
I will use my imagination.
Exactly. Just basically imagine everyone hates you and they're spewing vile...
Easy, it's done.
Yeah. No, welcome, Jeff. I really appreciate you being here today. I wanted to actually sit down with you, and then perhaps we'll see Chris here stop by in just a little bit to talk a little bit about Grey Mountain lore. Now, we've said that we are going to the Grey Mountains for Update 23 later this year, and for those who are less familiar with Tolkien lore, can we give them a little bit of a dive into what are the Grey Mountains and what are their significance in Middle-earth?
Yeah, I heard Dr. Octothorpe earlier talking about them a little bit, and he seemed to sum it up by saying that things were going great for the dwarves, and then they suddenly really, really weren't. And the story of the Grey Mountains is basically that things are going fine for dwarves, and then they're really, really not. And of course, I want to tiptoe around some of this because we have a lot of stories planned that we'll get into the specifics of what's going on up here. But suffice it to say that dwarves have a history of going places where they think they will find mineral wealth, usually, and then they run into trouble. And the as we've envisioned the Grey Mountains. This is an area where dwarves have repeatedly gone looking for something, and they've repeatedly run afoul of themselves, indigenous beasties, evil of various loyalties. Angmar is not especially far away from the Grey Mountains. And so, like that, the war with Angmar has touched upon some of the various dwarf attempts to eke out a living and mineral wealth in the Grey Mountains. There are a lot of the dragons that we know of in Middle-earth have come from this area. Thorog came from here. You might remember Thorog. He died before our game started, but that didn't stop us from using him. And Smog came from the Grey Mountains originally before he settled in the Lonely Mountain and started the whole mess. So the Grey Mountains are a really exciting place for people who love dwarves or people who don't really care for dwarves because it's bad for dwarves up here a lot.
So I'm actually curious to talk a little bit about the why of the dwarven history in Middle-earth. Do you think that it was Tolkien trying to make a bit of a commentary on, say, the Industrial Revolution, perhaps, that wasn't really necessarily all that far from his childhood? Or was this just kind of a fun fantasy thing, do you think?
So it probably wasn't just a fun fantasy thing, but I think that his comments on the Industrial Revolution, actually, they have more in common with the goblins of The Hobbit. There's a memorable passage, I believe it's in The Hobbit, where a lot of the things that the orcs and the goblins got up to eventually gave rise to our weapons of war, nuclear weapons, like the really bad things that I think has more in common with kind of the evil races as he envisioned them rather than the dwarves. Although the dwarves certainly tended to step on their own beards, we'll say, a little bit as they are delving too greedily. Like Khazad-dûm had mithril, which was unusual, and the constant search to get more of it is not a great trait. So it's not necessarily a lighthearted fantasy romp so much as there is a statement there And I think that's probably what he had in mind. I don't know if it was Industrial Revolution, because the dwarves don't, like, they weren't really known for machines.
No, I guess maybe it was more just some of the, explosive mining and things that were taking place, resource intensive kind of mining of probably Europe in particular, I would imagine,
Like
at the time.
strip mining,
right?
like where we're not leaving anything left.
Yeah.
The search for things like that is definitely at the forefront of people's minds when you think of dwarves. I would say, but yeah, the Grey Mountains as a spot where they didn't. We'll say they didn't find the next Khazad-dûm, but they were certainly looking for it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they didn't successfully find what they were looking for means that there are probably groups of dwarves that would be very interested to find out, like, why does this keep going bad over here? What can we do? There must be untapped riches, that kind of thing.
Are they called the Grey Mountains because they are gray?
Yeah, probably a safe assessment.
Yeah.
He had used a lot of other colors for the various mountain ranges already, so I think it makes sense that that he would use gray to describe. Also, his Tolkien's story doesn't really take him up here. He gets close, I guess, with Bilbo's return journey at the end of The Hobbit. Like, he doesn't necessarily go up in the mountains, but he travels like north of Mirkwood. But for the most part, maybe it's that these are the mountains that didn't concern him directly. They're gray.
Yeah.
Like, see them on the horizon.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Now, we don't want to spoil a lot of Update 23, but we can say that we're looking at that region, not just, say, the mountains here in general. So
yeah, I have unfinished business in Erebor specifically. I've been making some requests of various teams to help tell the story in Erebor. I don't think that's giving anything away that we haven't said before. There are lots of dwarf stories to tell still in Erebor, so I'd like to tell some of those. Mm-hmm. The Black Book of Mordor continues and answers some questions that you might not have known you should have been asking, so I'm excited for that.
Yep. Someone asked a question, when are we getting back to the book? I think the answer to that is probably, from a, let's say, development perspective, a little while, but even when we do this kind of thing, we are touching on themes and areas of the book itself. So while we may not be doing, let's say, Scouring of the Shire in Update 23, I don't know if it's fair to say that we're completely leaving the book behind either.
Yeah, I don't think we're leaving the book behind at all. It's interesting when you read the book as entertainment, and I did this as well when I read it in third grade and during all the years since. When I read it in third grade, I was like, get back to Frodo and Sam. Like, what? I can't believe we're wasting time in Rohan with these horse guys that nobody cares about. I care about them now. But at the time, I didn't, and I wanted to just get back to the things that concerned me, which was Frodo and Sam, and then eventually Gollum.
Yeah.
But as a game designer working on LOTRO, you really need to look at more than the main narrative. And when you look at other aspects of the book, other areas that are hinted at, that are described, maybe aren't explored in detail, like, you certainly care about the main narrative, but you want to explore those, walk down those trails, see where they lead, kind of thing. So we are definitely there are still characters that everyone is familiar with, that you will encounter in Update 23, even though we're not beelining directly back to the Shire so the hobbits can handle something. Like, Gandalf is still around, and he still has. He still needs to be disapproving of us. Like, there are a lot of things that are still going on that I think are book appropriate and related to the story, that aren't necessarily, well, why aren't we just rushing to the end? I've never really felt the desire to check off all the story beats and then say, hooray, we did it. I definitely want to explore all of those paths wherever they lead.
This is a random question, completely off topic, that someone is asking. But if anyone knows who I can throw a random lore question to is going to have an answer for me, it might be you.
Yeah.
So random lore question: is Gorathul considered a Gurzyul?
So Gorathul was not specifically one of the Gurzyul. Gorathul. So as a sorcerer, he certainly had powers, but he didn't have the same sort of powers that Dulgobeth, Ugrikor, Karsgar, like they had a very specific power set that Sauron wanted for them, and that he in a way imbued them with. Gorathul was, I think Gorathul is a power level below most of those guys, even though one of them we've dispatched more or less, and Gorathul is slow motion dead for a long time in our game. But yeah, not actually a Gurzyul, but a good question.
Another kind of random question here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, shoot, where was that? We have like 300 some people in chat, so it has a tendency to move by fairly quickly. So this is a question that I guess I'm going to take a somewhat different tactic on. He's asking specifically where we're going to be approaching the Grey Mountains from. Let me actually flip that around to say one that's maybe something that would be different, better answered by someone on the world building team and things like that.
Yeah, I know the answer. But.
Oh, do you? But how do we determine sort of where we approach these lands when we're bringing people to them?
Well, we'll be coming from the east, so we'll be going. If assuming I'm doing this correctly, east to west. Like our starting location is Erebor, so you will arrive at the Grey Mountains on the eastern side of them.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know if that makes them more interested or if that's what they were looking for, but
yeah,
that's the direction. One thing too that I have seen, I'm a horrible forum junkie. I'm always on the forums, and one of the things that I've seen is people asking, like, why are you building all of these areas floating off in space without like what happened to contiguous landscape? And one of the things that I like about LOTRO so much is that sometimes we start with a floating island somewhere, and it doesn't feel connected to anywhere else. But the thing that I've discovered as we go along is that the more you add to one of these floating landmasses, and the bigger it gets, the bigger it gets, the less it feels like it's not contiguous. At a certain point, it feels much more contiguous than it did at the outset. Like, for example, Gondor was not connected to, it wasn't contiguous. You had to go through a teleport to get there. But once we added so much to Gondor, like it is enormous. And I'm hoping that the Erebor, like Northern Mirkwood area, once we add to it, will gradually feel like another large space. So,
kind of a left turn here. Are there plans for Carudan the Elf from Volume 3? He disappeared before Helm's Deep, and we never heard or saw anything about him after that.
Well, I mentioned him in the last update. So if you're playing the Black Book of Mordor, there's movement on the Carudan front. So if you haven't played B-Bomb, as the author of it, I recommend it. Whether or not we are going to see Carudan soon or imminently, I won't say. But yeah, his fate is mysterious, but of some concern to various characters that we have encountered recently. So I haven't forgotten about him, Carudan Riverwalker, though many of you might have.
Swollen Tiki says, are the creatures in the Dark Delving from Tolkien, or is this something SSG came up with?
So this is like Foundations of Stone, like the Gredbig and the I forget what they're called. I think most of the creatures from that far below Moria are inspired by Tolkien, but not really ripped from the pages of the book. Like, it's the line that gave birth to most of those things was and far below the foundations of the earth. The earth is gnawed by nameless things. It's something like that. And like these are the almost the entire nameless genus of creatures in our game is supposed to be like an alien, unlike anything that you would see on the surface, sort of thing. So there's a little artistic license there for sure, but they are nameless creatures.
I've seen this question a couple of times, so I'm going to address it only just because I don't really have an answer, which is, will any of the events of the new Amazon series have anything to do with the game? The answer, as far as I'm aware, is no. We have. I have no idea what's going on there any more than anyone else does.
When it comes out, I'd love to watch it. Yeah. I'm very curious about what they do. Just because the challenge before them is a lot like the challenge that we have, where I'm sure that they're going to take from the source material, but then they're going to want to tell their new stories in Middle-earth. They're not going to retell things, I assume. Just like we try to have parallel narratives in some cases that follow along and explore Middle-earth, and I'm sure they'll want to do the same thing. So I'm interested in it.
Nice. How involved are you in setting difficulty of creatures in the area? When it comes to, say, working on a new piece of content, how tough should the monsters be? Is that something you get involved in?
So it's not. I'm almost not involved at all with landscape difficulty of monsters. We have our system team is the one that's really responsible for turning those dials and knobs. I specifically I have a little more input on the difficulty of the content that I specifically am making, for example, in instances or in the Black Book, where I want to make sure that it's accessible in a way that not all of the landscape content needs to be accessible in the same way that the storylines that I'm making generally do.
Yeah.
I don't usually get too involved in the number crunching that goes into that.
All right. Someone's saying thank you to whoever added the Dead Marshes. No Man Land's teleport for the anniversary. Don't turn it off afterwards.
Coincidence would have it, that was me.
Was it?
It was. I did
Nice.
I did the Year 11 Golem card for the anniversary quest, and one of my stipulations was that if I was going to do that work, I wanted to connect the Dead Marshes with the No Man Lands. So that's why there's a remembrance at the Dead Marshes, and then there's a remembrance just on the other side of that new portal to go to the No Man Lands. And unless people tell me that I shouldn't have done that, it won't be going away after the anniversary. It's a constant connection.
We get a lot of questions on the stream about, are we going to go here? Are we going to go there? And typically we can't really answer a lot of that kind of, suggestion fishing. So, but I guess let me just sort of say in general, I've seen the book and you have plans for just about every place.
Yeah, I think that's true. But even there are the big ticket places, which I'm not going to name right now, but anyone who is familiar with Middle-earth probably knows 3 or 4 major places that we could go next. But that said, I'm also interested in some of the, there are areas that we've already done which border places we haven't gone, mainly because, the thrust of the story took us in this one direction. I would love to add areas that didn't really address the main storyline, or, for example, the Black Book, which is where the next update is going to go. But we had an old term. I don't exactly remember where this came from, but way back in the launch game, we had a term for a koala region, which I think it came from quality. I don't remember exactly how, but the idea was that it was an area that was actually, everything old is new again. Scenario, who used to work on LOTRO and is now back, he was heavily involved in the koala development of. I think that's how the Bree Horsefields originally started, as a koala region. But I would love to do more of those which are content light areas, which are, but the geography is there for exploration, for connecting to other places. They're I guess they would be good areas for our peers to go. As a content designer, I want there to be content, but I also see the value in there being just places that exist just because you need hills and trees between, populated settlements.
Yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
thing. So I would love to do more of those. That's probably above my pay grade to suggest it, or to make it happen, but I would suggest it.
Well, I think anything you say on the stream here is required to happen.
Oh, well,
so,
in that case.
Yeah, nice. All right, I'm not going to take too much more of your time. I really do appreciate you bringing your insight to the live stream here. It's always lovely to hear you talk about things. Can I ask in general, what are you working on right now?
So, so the thing that I just had finished up a little while ago was the year 11 Gollum anniversary thing. And then right around the same time, I was working on a secret thing, which you'll find out about later in the year. So I can't talk about that. And then later than that, there's another secret thing which I was working on. So I probably can't talk about that, but I will tell you that the curse is real. So if you might know what that means. Aside from that, I've been making world and art requests for the upcoming update. So I'm pretty much going to be in the Grey Mountains, hanging out with a bunch of dwarves. So
Nice. Thank you so much for stopping by the stream. It was really nice to talk to you as always.
thank you. I love it.
All right. I am going to do another giveaway here on Twitch and